Well, I've got 7 o'clock straight up and down. I know a lot of more people are going to be joining here, but we can at least start talking a little bit. Tonight, I'm excited. Danielle and I have been talking about communication and specifically personality based selling. So, like the DISC profile is what we're going to talk about tonight. There's also the Myers Briggs or Strengths Finders, or there's an animal one I did, your Serengeti. There's all different kinds of personality assessments you can do to understand how to talk to people, how to ask questions, how you land with people. And it's interesting. I was talking this morning to an agent who's a very successful agent. So his third year in the business, he was doing 150 transactions a year. I mean, he's a grinder, just a real grinder. And he said, Rick, the two best things I ever learned was number one, mirroring and matching, like NLP, neuro linguistic
Hmm.
programming, and the DISC assessment. He goes, those are the first two things I learned when I got into real estate. And he goes, those have been the most helpful things in my career. And I said, well, there you go. I'm glad that we're talking about that tonight then. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
mirroring,
Danielle,
that's
when were
been
you
around for a
first
long time,
introduced?
but
What's that?
I said mirroring, that's of course it's not a
Yeah.
new concept by any means, but it is fascinating how even if you're not really in tune or aware in the moment of that, how you find yourself mirroring and kind of mimicking your client and their behavior, talking with the same cadence and the same speed or same body language, right? I often feel like, man, I am entirely different people depending on the
Yeah.
client I'm around and their energy level for sure.
Yeah. Well, that's what you and I were talking about earlier, Danielle. A lot of this stuff with AI, when we talk about Huzi and how it can help us, it's not helping us with anything necessarily new. This is stuff that it's helping us with. It's been around forever. It's just AI can help you figure out how to implement it into your business and actually use it day to day rather than just it being a concept or a book on the shelf or some notes in my journal. How can I actually implement this stuff? And AI is really good at that. So I want to teach tonight a little bit of the disc. I want to go through some of this stuff just to make sure we're all familiar with it. And then how would I use Huzi? And I went into Huzi and asked it and did some role playing with Huzi, which I just love that. So I want to show you that because I think it's something that's really valuable that you can all do as well.
And then before we get started too, I'd love to just kind of challenge everybody on the call to, um, kind of be self-reflective while you're on the call and think about, we'd love to hear from you. So have you had any moments of real clarity or like breakthrough moments with AI where you all of a sudden started to approach it a different way? Or perhaps where, it's kind of become clear that you've had a gap in a certain skill set that's now showing up also when you go and approach this new technology. It may have been how you interacted with a principal broker before, or a co-op broker, or agents, or something like that. But now that same potential gap in a skill set, maybe a soft skill, it's kind of weaseling its way into your tech adoption. In this case,
Yeah.
specifically AI. So marinate on that while we're talking tonight, and I'd love to hear if you have any self reflection and kind of breakthrough moments, or something that you could maybe use some help with, or leverage the group tonight for some tips.
That'd be good. Well, one thing, Danielle, too, I was teaching a leadership event back in Sun Valley, Idaho a few years ago. And I remember we had 26 agents in our first one. And these are Myers-Briggs was the first thing that we did. So if you know what the disc is, the Myers-Briggs is similar. Do you guys familiar with the Myers-Briggs, the MBTI, right? Your four letters. Okay. So the second letter is you're either an N or an S. You're an intuitive or you're a sensor. So like on a disc profile, that would be more like a C is the sensor, the conscientious style, and an S would be more of the I, the influencer. But on the Myers Briggs, we put up a picture on the wall and it had a lot of different things going on in this picture. And we gave everybody 1 minute to look at the picture. And our instructions were write down what you see. That's literally all we said. Write down what you see. And there's a lot of stuff going on in this picture. So we just like put projectors up on the wall, and had this picture. There was like an ocean and a boat and a clock and a cloud and a hand and a bird and all kinds of different stuff. So then I said, okay, you had 1 minute, everybody go. And then when we were done, I said, okay, all the S's in the room, the second letter being S in your Myers-Briggs, stand up. So it was like 7 or 8 of the people, stood up, might have been 10. And I had them go through and tell us, what did you guys write down? And every single one of the S's wrote down a list. They literally had a list of what was in the picture: a bird, a hand, a clock, the ocean, a wing, all these different things. Like every single one. I said, did anybody have anything different? And none of them had anything different. I said, okay, go ahead and sit down. So then I had the N's stand up and I said, okay, so why doesn't somebody read us your list? Or what did you guys write down? And the first person, Janet, I'll never forget Janet Parsons from Boise, Idaho. She started going through this whole story about how she saw this as like a representation of the universe and the passing of time on earth. And it was the hand of God reaching down from the clouds and turning the page of time. And everybody in the S's were all sitting there going, I mean, their jaws just like dropped, right? What picture were you looking at? Was this the same thing? And every single one of the ends had some kind of a story. And it was really funny because we were all adults, we're all in real estate, we're all, we think very similar, but boy, we were not. We looked at the exact same picture for 1 minute and had a complete different experience. So to me, that was very eye-opening as to wow, I always knew the disc was kind of cool and people do see things a little bit differently. I had no idea until I started doing those leadership trainings how differently people see things. And if we want to land with our clients, we better understand, or at least try to understand, how they see things. Otherwise, I mean, how many of you done a listing presentation? I've done this in my career where I thought it went really well. I thought they liked me. We got along really well. We were hitting them off. I had great rapport, and they listed with somebody else. I know nobody on this call's ever had that happen, but I've had that happen to me before. And like, I used to think, what is going on? And I remember thinking, oh, I wasn't closing them, I wasn't directive enough, or I just wasn't quite speaking their language. And that's what the disc is all about, is trying to learn how to speak as many different types of people's language as you can so you have better success with them.
That's
Yeah.
fantastic. And I know when we sit in these listing appointments, I'm thinking about all the different times too, where, okay, you've got when we should have a fairly standard listing presentation that we provide to all of our clients so that they have a really clear picture on the service we provide them. Um, but without a doubt, every client receives it differently. Like some are just blown away and they're in awe. And you know that it's that presentation right there that's getting me 4 referrals after this because they're just in shock at all that goes
Mm-hmm.
into what we do. And then sometimes you're sitting at the table and you just get the feeling that they're like, yeah, 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 next, 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 next. Tell me where to sign. This is all, just lip service essentially. And so
Yeah.
you know that and you try to react on the spot, but this is a really good example of how we can be more thoughtful and prescriptive. I mean, disc is very more prescriptive if
Yeah.
we're clued into those conversations and we can take that maybe to our pre-listing workflow that's now AI powered with
Mm-hmm.
this process, right? We could have been clued into some conversations we had initially and then prep for a listing appointment with now this layer baked into it. So we're not on the spot trying to make on the spot adjustments. I love this. This is great.
Right. Well, let me teach you. I want to show you this image first. I'm going to share this because I do it a little bit differently. If you look at images online, so by the way, I'll show you this first. So if you look at disc images online, they always go in order DISC, and there's a reason you have to have a specific order. So I'm going to share my screen with you here. So if you look at this image, I changed it. I had Huzi change it because the normal disc image is the DISC. So the D is where the S is, and the S is where the D is. These are the only two that are switched, but they're always opposite. It's fine because they're always opposing, and the C and the I are opposing. That's by design. So it's really important to understand how we have opposing forces here. So I just want to make sure you guys see this. Can you see this screen now right here
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
with the S, I, the D, and the C?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Um, I want to start with the S. So if you look at this, the top left is the S. That stands for the steady personality, right? The steadfast, steady. They like consistency. They like things that aren't surprises. They don't like big risks. So the S, I'm going to give you a little bit of background on each one of these. Then I'm going to go into the canvas and talk to you about how I would use AI to help me put this into perspective in real life. But just a broad understanding, I want you to start off with this. I'll give you one word to understand each of these by, and I'm going to give you some strengths and weaknesses. So the one word for the S is help. S's like to help people. And S's are the majority of the population, by the way. About 67% of the population leads with S. Now, to be clear, we all have all of these in us. We all can be any of these on any given time. But what do we tend to lead with is what we're trying to look for here. So S's lead with the helper mentality. They are real estate agents, they're nurses, they're doctors, they're school teachers, they're fundraisers, they're people that like to help other people. So some of the strengths of the S's is they're very nurturing, they're professional huggers. People love them, people trust them right away, people start telling them their life story right away because they're just very trustworthy, nurturing people. So their strengths are they build rapport very good. They care about other people. They're probably a feeler in the Myers-Briggs. They can feel other people's feelings really well. So those are some really big positive strengths. The negatives of the S might be they don't make decisions very well because they don't want to hurt other people's feelings. So the fun story I always tell is if you get a group of 5 or 6 S's together in a room, you say, "Where do you guys want to go to lunch?" They say, "Well, where do you want to go to lunch?" "Well, whatever you want to do is fine with me. What do you guys want to do?" "I don't know. I don't care." Getting somebody to step up and make a decision can be difficult if you have S's because they don't like to be that confrontational. They're typically warmer, more friendly, more neutral personalities, right? So that's the first one is the S. So help is the word for the S. The I is the next one. The I's are your influencers. These are your salespeople. These are your talkers. They talk a lot. They talk fast. They think fast. They finish your sentences for you. I'm an I. Okay, I'm a DI, if that makes sense. So they go 100 miles an hour. Their brains go 100 miles an hour. They love emotion. They love surprises. They love to travel. They love to meet new people. Think about like a buyer's agent where you're always in front of new people and you're driving around showing property. This is like tailor made for an I. They love getting into new relationships with people all the time. The one word I would use for I is party because I's like to party. They like to have fun. They like to travel. They're very emotional. They wear their emotions on their sleeve. They're really good at language and influencing people. They're not very good at listening. They're not very good at details and slowing down and following up with people and creating nurturing systems, like all the back office stuff. That's where they're struggling. Eyes are great with people. They're great front people. They're not so great administrative people behind the scenes because they talk too much and they want to talk to more people all the time. Right. Okay, now this is the first D now. The D is the first one we have an opposite. Notice the D is opposite of the S. The D is the rarest one, but that stands for the dominant personality. The D's are very bottom line thinkers. They're like, okay, cut to the chase, Danielle. What's your commission? Right? An S would never say that because that's just like way too confrontational. But a D's just gonna be like, hey, let's just cut to the chase here. Don't give me any fluff. Let's get right to it. D's are typically managers, they're bosses, they're business owners, they're in politicians, they're in positions where they can tell other people what to do because D's like to tell people what to do. They're very organized. Their strengths are they're very organized. They get a lot done. They're very efficient. Their weaknesses are slowing down and listening, just like the I, and empathy. They don't so the S and the D, notice here, they're kind of opposing forces. S's and D's sometimes don't get along very well because S's think D's are obnoxious and rude and pushy and bossy and confrontational, where D's think S's are wimpy and whiny and can't make a decision and can't stand up for something. I'm exaggerating, but I want you to like really see the points of these different personalities. Is that fair? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to exaggerate them all a little bit here. So the D is the dominant driver, opposite of the S. Then the last one is the C. Stands for the conscientious personality type. The one word I would use for C, oh, by the way, the one word for D is money. Typically, D's are money motivated. Whatever I need to do to get this to work. They're bottom line thinkers, money motivated. C, the word I would use for them is information. Think of Mr. Spock from Star Trek. Data, information, accuracy, no emotion. They're the opposite of the I. The I is all about emotion. The C is all about information. And so if you're going to talk to a C on a listing presentation, you better have 10 comps instead of 3 comps. You better have a net sheet. You better talk about absorption rates. You better talk about what's going on in the market. You better know your statistics because that's what C's want to know. If you start going through statistics and market absorption rates with an I, they're going to glaze over and you're going to lose them really fast. So you kind of have to know who your audience is here. So the C is very good at making decisions. They just take a long time to make them. These are the slow decision makers, but they stick with them once they've made the decision. So these are your engineers, These are your computer programmers, your accountants. They move slow. They typically talk slow, but they're very thoughtful and they think about things and process things before they speak. Okay, everybody got these? So now think about this. Look at these top two. The S and the I are on top. These are people oriented personalities. They're people oriented, meaning they think about people first in any scenario. They think, how is this going to affect people? Before they make decisions for their company or in their business, they think about, how is this going to affect other people? They're people oriented. The bottom, the C and the D, are systems oriented, not people oriented. They think about systems first. They think about implementation. They think about processes. Then they think about people. So it's a very different lens. S's and I's are people oriented, C's and D's are systems oriented. And on the left, we have the S and the C. Now, this is not always the case, but usually S's and C's are a little bit quieter, more introverted types of people, where the I and the D are usually a little bit louder, more extroverted types of people, more outspoken. Okay. So I just want to make sure I'm laying a little bit of a foundation so you have a clear image in your head of what each personality is. Does that help? Do you kind of have a little image, Daniel? I see you nodding your head there.
Mm-hmm.
You can kind of
Mm-hmm.
see what each one is, right? So here's one of the best, most important things in real estate is try and figure out who you are, number one, and who your clients are. Like if I went to Mexico and did a listing presentation, I don't speak Spanish. So I would rather the people there talk to me in broken English than fluent Spanish. I'd rather they at least attempt to talk to me in my language because I could probably figure it out. But if they stay fluent Spanish, they're going to miss me. And vice versa. If I'm speaking fluent English and they don't speak English, they'd probably rather me try and speak to them in broken Spanish. These are exactly the same ways we think about the disc is if you're an I like I am, if I'm talking to a C, they know, maybe this is subconscious, but there's something about us that knows the other person is not like us. But at least if they're making an attempt to talk our language, it helps. If I'm talking to a C, I better slow down. I better let them respond in their own time, give them more data and information, and be patient. If I stay in my I and I talk about how fun this is going to be and how great it's going to be to move on to the next chapter of their life and all these big grandiose ideas that I's have, C's don't like that. It doesn't matter to them. It's clutter and it actually bothers them. So same thing is vice versa. If you're a C talking to an I, you better speed up and make this fun or you're going to lose me pretty quick. If you go through a 47-page dissertation on absorption rates, I'm out. It's not going to work, right? You have to learn how to talk to each style to be effective. So I went into Huzi. So I want to show you this board here in a second. But before I do that, comments on that. Danielle, thoughts? What do you think? Have you seen that? I'm sure you have. How do you think about this kind of stuff? And do you think about it much?
Yeah, I mean, I've always thought that it's one of those things, and a lot of the bigger organizations do this. You know, if you've got teams in different departments that are working together, to have your team members run a disc profile, so that not that you're not looking to put people necessarily into categories, but to your point, you're looking for a way to connect with them and speak their language and bridge that gap, right? Because um, you're on the same team. And so to remove some friction, and same thing with our clients too. So it's a really
We
valuable
had a
tool.
panel, Danielle, we had a panel yesterday at a brokerage I was helping facilitate, and we had four people up there. Three were self-proclaimed S's or I's, and one of them was a D. Okay. And we were talking on the panel about the buyer representation agreement. You guys all remember this month, 2 years ago, the law changed where we're supposed to have people sign a buyer rep agreement before we show them property, right? I'm not going to put you on the spot here, but that's what
Yeah.
we're supposed to do. So in the panel, I said, okay, let's just get down to brass tacks here. In reality, what do you guys do? Both of the S's and the I, they might bring it up, but they don't have the person sign it until they write an offer. The D has them sign it right away and doesn't show property until it's signed. It's like, that was no shock to me, but it was just really funny. It was like, because these are all producing agents. All these agents are sold more than 30 houses last year on this panel. And they all admitted in our little closed group, now I'm getting it out to the world, that, yeah, the S's were just like S's. They didn't want to pressure people. They didn't want to be confrontational. That's what an S does. Where the D's like, no, I'm not going to show them property unless they sign the deal. and they weren't, nobody's thinking they're being a jerk or nobody, they're just being themselves. So I said, sometimes we need to channel other personality types depending on the situation, just to make sure we're getting done what we need to get done. Like, I would think sometimes an S needs to channel their inner D and be more directive. Sometimes a D needs to channel their S and be more nurturing. It's like, depends on the situation, but we need to understand how to do that in the first place.
Hmm. Well, and I think some of it too is, again, being self-reflective, going back to when we just started this call. So if you're an S and you're thinking about the person and you're wanting to just really make things easy for them, remove friction, all of that, what is it about that step in the process, this federally mandated step
Right.
that feels that way to you, right? Because
Mhm.
that's a personal thing.
Yep.
And so to just be self-reflective on of what about my personality type is creating this hurdle for myself, because it isn't necessarily about my client. It's how I'm framing it in my own mind, not necessarily how they're going to receive it, because they're going to receive it how we frame it to them.
That's right.
So it's
That's right.
getting not just us communicating to our client, but maybe in what you're pointing out here, Rick, is it's how do we communicate to ourselves sometime,
Yep.
right?
Yeah, we need to get in touch with our inner D or our inner challenger from the challenger sale, right?
Yeah, or is there a different way to frame this such that it's to their benefit, that it helps them, that it unites the two of you on the same page with a very clear and collective goal in mind. If you framed
Mhm.
it that way in your mind, would it be easier to tackle?
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. I'm writing that down, as a matter of fact. Different way to frame it. Um, I like that. Well, it's so often it comes from, because these are agents have all been in the business a long time. And so I dug in a little bit, Danielle, and I asked the ones that said they don't do it until they were kind of sheepish about it. They don't do it until writing the offer. I said, why not? And they said, well, that's how they originally did it, and that's how they were trained in the industry years ago. I'm like, okay. And they understood that, that's not probably the best, and that's not obviously what's required now, but that's just how they've always done it. I'm like, okay, so that's a confidence thing to learn how to pivot and change. So I think confidence is really important.
I think it's confidence, because all our other forms change every year, and somehow I'm sure they adopt to those. So
Yeah.
it does. It just feels very personal. I get it. It's an
Yeah.
uphill climb for sure.
Yeah. Well, let me show you this. I want to show you this, what I did in Huzi here in this canvas. So you can see my canvas here.
Hmm.
All right. So I changed the image, obviously. Well, I went through and I took all the different disc profiles. I created a context box. I just pasted a bunch of stuff from the different disc websites on what discs were. And Huzi knows that anyway, because it found it. So then I opened up this box. I said, okay, let's go through a bullet point training. The first thing I did was I just want to know like do's and don'ts with each style. So this is really cool. I mean, Huzi's amazing for this, because then it turned into, okay, give me some real life real estate scenarios. Then it turned into, okay, let's role play this. So I want to show you as I go down through this. But originally it said, okay, dominant driver clients. These are the D people. Here's what to do. Here's what to say. Like, here's the bottom line. This property give you the best return on investment in this price range. My strategy to win this deal is this. We can close in 3 weeks. These are all statements, and these are all very directive. In fact, I was coaching a client the other day, literally on the same thing. They wrote an email and they had me read it before they sent it. And the email actually, and their client is a D. This is a $2 million house. The client, the house is in Boise, Idaho. The seller has moved back to California. So the house is vacant and it's been on the market for 107 days. So they're redoing a bunch of stuff. And the problem is it's been overpriced. And the agent's been trying to tell the seller this and has been telling the seller this, but still allowing the seller to kind of get what they want. And now the seller's getting frustrated because it's been a long time on the market. And so he read the email to me first. He goes, okay, based on all the things I'm seeing selling in this area, in this neighborhood, in this price point, and based on all the houses that are getting showings, here's where we need to be with our pricing, which I thought was great. His wording was perfect. But then he said, let me know if you'd like to have a Zoom call to talk about this. In other words, the pricing, which he just talked about. I said right there, that's an S statement, and you're talking to a D. Don't ever say, let me know, Danielle, if it makes sense and we can talk about this and I can set up a Zoom call. They don't respect that. A D will not respect that. I said, change that sentence to, we're going to go with this pricing strategy. And how did I exactly word it? This is what we're going to do. If you're available for a Zoom call to talk about this tomorrow, I'm available from 3 to 4 o'clock. Like, if you want to do this, let's do it. If not, this is what we're doing. And a D would respect that. They would respect you making a decision. They hired you for the reason. So if you every single time say, well, here's what I think we should do, but what do you think? I mean, it's your house. It's like, that's not what a D wants to hear. A D wants to hear you being, take charge. This is what we're going to do. We're going to have a Zoom call to go over this pricing strategy tomorrow at 3 o'clock. That's exactly what the kind of thing you should say to a dominant person. Here's your three best options. I'll handle the details. You make the decision. Are you ready to do this? Like, don't say, this is like almost word for word what my client had said. Let me tell you a story about my past client, or how was your weekend? Tell me about your family. I'm not sure. Let me think about it. Oh, this might work, or maybe we could try. These are very indecisive statements. Or what do you think we should do? This is not what a D wants to hear. They want to be more direct. So I love having Huzi tell me just right away. This is a nice little bullet point. And then key approaches: be direct, confident, and results focused, communicate effectively, efficiently, show your competitive edge, and keep meetings short and productive. So I like how it has a little bit of a synopsis at the end. So Danielle, when you talk to a D, what is, I mean, it's an obvious D. What do you do differently, or do you think about it consciously, or is it natural because you've done it so long, or how do you talk to them?
Yeah, no, I mean, well, I think you're hitting on all the bullet points right here. It's being assertive and taking an authority position because are hiring a professional. So they need to
Right?
trust that they can hand that off to you and be led in the right direction, and that you know exactly what information to gather, the context needed to help them take the right steps forward. Um, I I remember I was working with this one. I had interviewed. He had told me that he was interviewing five different agents. Who knows? You never know, right?
You never
Um,
know.
and the first meeting was he wanted to set this up so that I met with his assistant. So my listing appointment was going to be with his assistant, and I said, "No, I'll wait for a time when, or we're going to schedule a time when we can get together. Like
Right.
you and I." So we did. That was fantastic. And then I remember this was a couple years ago, a number of years ago. So he was planning for a vacation. And I sent him an overnight mail, which was, things to do in Tahiti, with a sticky note that said, "Let's move forward so you can focus on your vacation, and I'll take this all off your plate." Like,
Nice.
we'll just make the decision for you. So very
Right.
assertive, right? That's what they want.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Well, then I went through, each one of these. Go through I here for a minute. What do you say to an I? Remember, I is the influencer, the salespeople that like to talk. You're going to love this neighborhood. Like, now we're invoking emotion all of a sudden. With D's, you kind of stay away from emotion, both D's and C's. With I's and S's, though, they like emotion. They like empathy. Imagine hosting your friends here for game night. Like, everyone who sees this property falls in love with it. This is such an exciting opportunity. Your friends are going to be so impressed. Like, these are things that I's resonate with. Don't say things like, let's review the 47-page inspection report in detail, right? A C would love that. A C wants to review the inspection report, and I is like, oh gosh, how do I get out of here? I do not want to look at this. Um, Here's a spreadsheet comparing cost per square foot. We need to focus on the numbers, not the aesthetics. Eyes don't like numbers. I don't have time for small talk. Let's get to business. Eyes love small talk, right? Stop getting emotional about properties. Well, eyes, that's what they do, is they get emotional. This is a transaction, not a relationship. No, the eyes see everything as a relationship. I need you to read all this documentation tonight. An eye is not going to do that. So these are what not to say. Key approaches with the eye: build the relationship first, be enthusiastic and positive, paint the lifestyle vision. I love that one. Make the process fun and engaging, and use social proof, testimonials and social proof. Those are spot on because I'm a DI and I can just resonate with those really well. So that goes along with my one word for the eye. Remember, it was party. Guys like to party and have fun. They like to travel, meet new people, experience new things. So make real estate sales fun for them, and you'll have them. But if it's too dry or too serious or too technical, you're going to lose the eyes. Okay. Then the S's, the steady, supported clients. I'll be with you every step of the way. There's no pressure. We'll take our time. This is a very stable, established neighborhood. right? You're trying to, again, communicate that safety. There's no risk. You understand, you're empathetic, you're nurturing. Let's make sure your family feels good about this. Use feeling words, not thinking words. What not to say, we need to decide today or lose this property. The challenge with this is if they're a C or an S, because they're the slowest movers, the D and the I are the fastest movers. But if it's 2021 and the house is going to sell that day, um, you've got to figure out a nice, empathetic way to create urgency with an S. And sometimes we've all experienced this. We've all had clients that they missed a house because they just waited too long. And sometimes it takes that pain before they start listening to you. I'm sure those of you on this call have had that happen to you before.
Mhm. Mhm.
So you don't want to say things that pressure them. Just trust me. Don't worry about the details. Forget about what your family thinks. What do you want? Speed is everything in this market. I don't have to explain. Just sign here. Like you don't want to be too direct and too confrontational with an S. So be patient and reassuring. Provide step-by-step guidance. Emphasize stability and security. I love that. Include family in the process and listen more than you talk. So these are good approaches for the S. The C, remember the conscientious. This is the engineer. This is Mr. Spock. Talk a lot about market data. Talk about detailed comparative market analysis. The inspection report. I prepared a comprehensive written breakdown for you. The cost per square foot, based on the facts and figures. I mean, this is what they want to hear. They want to know numbers based on facts and research, not your opinion or how exciting this is going to be. Don't say, trust your gut. Don't worry about the details. I have a feeling. Exact numbers don't really matter. Let's just go with our emotions here. Like these are what not to say to a C. You want to provide detailed documentation, be prepared with data and facts, show your expertise through analysis, give them time and space. Remember, C's are slower to make decisions. That's okay. Give them that time and that space, and then be very precise and accurate. If you ever had a friend critique your texts for punctuation or grammar, they're probably a C, or at least they have some C in them. Right. So, quick reference chart. I like this. Huzi just came up with this all on its own. So, the D is fast and direct communication speed, focus on results and ROI, provide options with pros and cons, avoid small talk and indecision. That's good to remember. With the I love this. I think, I didn't even ask Kuzi to do this part of it, but it just came up with a quick reference chart for me because I'm going to get into now is like, how do I tell without giving my clients a disc assessment? How do I tell what they are? I could make all my clients sit down and say, hey, take this 20-minute disc assessment for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'm probably not going to do that. So tips like listen to their first email, their text, their initial responses. So questions, guys. My favorite question, instead of asking people, what do you do for a living? Because sometimes what people do for a living doesn't match their personality. Like, let's say the person's at really high C. They're a computer programmer. They're really good at computer programming. They love their job, but they're so good at their job, they get promoted to the manager position. Well, the manager is a D job. So now this person hates their job. They have a lot of stress. They don't really like what they do anymore. They'd rather be a programmer, but they make more money and they need the career advancement of the supervisor. So they're out of position. But sometimes asking people what they do for a living can help. But my favorite question to ask clients is, what do you guys like to do in your free time? That's my favorite question when I'm working with buyers or clients I'm just meeting for the first time. What do you guys like to do in your free time? And what they say and how they say it is very telling. If you have to interrupt them, you can't get them to shut up, they're probably an I, right? If they give you tight lipped, you have to drag everything out of them answers, they're probably an S or a C. I mean, you can just start to kind of feel people. Some people are very obvious, others, it's a little more difficult. So, really ask good questions and spend time thinking about that. Comments on that, Danielle?
Yeah, it's fascinating. I'm curious, have you done any research? Do you know if introvert versus extrovert has any overlay and influence on this? Because, whether or not you're an introvert or extrovert, people are always surprised or sometimes surprised to learn of certain people, but it's not how you are necessarily in public, but how you recharge, right? Like
Yes. Yep.
I am an introvert, which always shocks people, right? Because I
Right.
am I
Right.
talk, I'm in public, I coach, I do speaking, all of that. But that's not how I recharge. And so you wonder how much that kind of influences, or if we had that information, that overlay would help us kind of
Yeah.
decipher where people
It's
fall.
interesting because I know a lot of really successful agents that are introverts, and you wouldn't know they're introverts. I think of them just in thinking of them. I think they're extroverts because they do talk to people a lot. They're not afraid to make the calls. But just like you say, on a Saturday morning with nobody around, what are they doing? They're recharging on their own. They get their energy from solitude, where extroverts get their energy from other people.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah,
Hmm. Yeah.
big time. So it came up with some role playing scenarios, which I thought was really fun. Because that's one thing I like about AI. You can just give it scenarios. It just came up with these scenarios, but you can give it real scenarios, which I'll show you in a minute, and role play with it. But I had it come up with some role play scenarios first. I said, okay, scenario one, the overpriced listing. None of us ever had that before. And let's say the seller is a D type seller with overpriced listing. Your seller wants to list their home at 850. The comp show 775 is the right price. Don't say, well, I understand you have an emotional connection to this home. I know you've made so many memories here. Maybe we could try your price for a few weeks and see what happens. I don't want to upset you. Okay. A D is not going to respect that. That's not how you talk to a D. A D would be like, here's the reality. Market data shows 775,000 is the winning price. At 850, we're going to sit for 60 plus days. Then we're going to drop the price and look desperate. At 775, we can create competition, likely get multiple offers, and potentially sell above asking. Bottom line, you need more money faster at the lower price. You'll make more money, net more money faster at the lower price. Here's the strategy I recommend. So, data driven, focused on winning, no emotional fluff. This is how you would talk to a D. So, that's a great little scenario there, and I agree with it. Um, how I would talk to a D. I wouldn't say I don't want to upset them. I wouldn't say, well, okay, we can go ahead and try this. If it's not a motivated seller and they want to go ahead and try it, that's up to you. But how you talk to them should be based on and be determined by what their personality is. If they need a little bit of nurturing and a little bit of hand holding and they're an S, then do that. But if it's a D, you want to be direct. So the second scenario is an indecisive buyer on the fence, and they're a type I buyer. Okay. Your buyer has seen 15 homes. They love them all, but they won't commit to making an offer on any of them. I don't know if we've ever had that. So the wrong approach is look at the spreadsheet comparing all 15 properties by price per square foot, tax rates, and HOA fees. We need to analyze the data and make a logical decision based on investment value, not emotions. That is not what an I is going to do. Right. And I wouldn't like to do that at all. So you say, okay, I love touring with you. You have such great energy. Now let's talk about which home made you the most excited. When you imagined hosting your friends, which kitchen felt right? Which backyard made you think this is where I want to spend my weekends? Let's narrow it down to your top two favorites, and I'll help you make the one you love become yours. Like I like that better. That's more directive, but it's also acknowledging their emotional ties and how they like to get emotional about things. So that's a fun one. We got the inspection negotiation with a type C. These issues aren't a big deal. Don't ever say that to a C. Every house has problems. Don't overthink it. I have a feeling this is still the right house. Trust me, you're going to love living here. Let's move forward. No, a C wants, I review the inspection in detail. Here's my analysis, right? List all the concerns, get quotes from different contractors, estimate repair costs, like literally get into the weeds with a C because that's what they want, and then direct them. Then scenario number four is like multiple offer situations with an S. And you can see how AI can help us think through how would we talk to this person? How would we communicate that's going to be the best for them and get us the best results? So there's an S approach to a multiple offer situation. There's a first time buyer consultation approaches. And it gives me some email template ideas, which I kind of thought was fun. But then I finally said to it, I said, okay, um, since I'm not having my clients take a dick assessment, what are some ways to tell what style they lead with? What are some good questions to ask and help me figure out what style they are? Like, oh, so Huzi says, okay. And by the way, I'm using Claude Sonnet. I don't know if you guys saw this on here. I'm using Claude 4.5. I love Claude. I don't know if you want to talk about that at all, Danielle, but whenever I do stuff like this where I want content, that's my go-to. What do you think about that?
Yeah, same. Claude's my go-to as well too. And if you guys haven't played around with the different models, Rick and I do this every once in a while. Take the same prompt or question to different models and just get a feel for how they interact with you. You know, that initial like, oh, Danielle, you're so smart that comes back. How heavy is it with the various models? How much information do you get back? How detailed is it? Things like that. And then just kind of take a note, just like you would your human team members or resources or mentors, you're going to go to different ones for different use cases and different conversations. So same thing with your AI models.
Yeah. And the different AI models, it's kind of like it's funny that we're talking about this personalities. There's different personalities. They do things differently. They go about it differently. So you get different outputs from the same inputs if it's a different model, just like if it's a different disk profile. It's funny. We should have somebody, Danielle, do an analysis of Claude, Chat GPT, Gemini, Perplexity, all the big ones out there, and say, okay, based on similar prompts across the board and looking at their outputs, which ones are more like a D and which ones are more like an S and which ones are more like an I, because they're probably going to fall into some of those categories, I would bet.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Because they're
That's a
just
good
like
point.
people.
Actually, that would be a fun exercise to do internally.
It would be fun because they are different and your outputs are very different. But I love Claude for these kinds of things. So then I said, okay, how to identify disk styles without a formal assessment? Well, number one, observation clues before you even meet. So I like this. So this it broke it down into this before we even meet, like before I even ask them any questions, I can observe some things. So I thought that was fun. So type D indicators, they're short, they have short direct messages, no fluff. Bullet points or numbered lists. They may skip greetings. Hey, need to see how's a Saturday, send options. Like an S would never send you a text like that. If somebody sends you a text like this, they're obviously a D. Use words like bottom line, results, fast, or deal. Responds quickly, expects quick responses from you. That's another big trait of a D. They'll respond fast, but they also expect you to respond fast. They may seem abrupt or demanding. I indicators, lots of exclamation points and emojis. Okay. That's my daughter right there. Friendly conversation tone, long messages that go off topic. Yeah, this is the I where you have to interrupt them to kind of steer them back. I always tell that story about, the I was going to show up at one of my classes one time and she's telling me why she was late. She walks into the meeting. I'm sorry I was late. I had to take the car to the car dealership because the alternator went out. And oh, I can't tell you what they want for alternators these days. When I was a kid, an alternator was like $100 now. And she goes off this whole big tangent about cars. And I'm like, okay, sit down. We're in the meeting now. But that's an I for you, right? They just go from one thing to another. Long messages that go off topic. They use words like love, excited, amazing, can't wait, emotional words. They may take
Mhm.
longer to respond because they may be distracted. They're typically social people. So they have lots of stuff going on and they share personal stories unprompted. I love that one. Uh, S indicators. They're polite, formal language. Thank you so much for this. They use capitalization and punctuation, probably in their text even. They ask considerate questions. Is this time convenient for you? They may apologize unnecessarily. Hey, sorry to bother you. Don't do that, by the way. Don't you do that as a salesperson, but because people don't respect that. But if your client does that, it's kind of polite. But if you're going to be the leader and you're going to be the head of this transaction and you're the expert, don't start things like that. Hey, sorry to bother you. Is now a good time? Don't ever do that in an email or a call. My advice here. Use words like comfortable, safe, stable, family, thoughtful, measured responses. They may CC family members or mention need to discuss with a spouse. So these are S's. C indicators. They're detailed and they ask very specific questions. They use proper grammar and punctuation. They may include research that they've done. They use words like data, analysis, details, and documentation. They must ask you probably technical questions before you even meet with them. They might send long, information dense messages. That's definitely a friend of mine who's a C. She sends me really long, detailed emails. It's like, oh my gosh, like a novel in an email. So these are before you even talk. So then phone call clues. When you're on the phone with a D, they get right to business, not a lot of small talk. They sound impatient. They want action. They may multitask during the call. You hear them typing in the background. Uh, so I love that ChatGPT and Huzi, and this is particularly Claude, came up with these like cues to look for before you even ask questions. Then it goes into the questions, which I just love this. Uh, Opening questions that reveal personality type. Tell me about your current situation. What's prompting your move? So that's a great question. It goes right along with my question. What do you like to do in your free time? Like, tell me what's about your current situation. What's prompting your move? A D type answer. Job relocation, need to close by June 30th, looking for a 3-bed minimum, good schools, under 600K. What's available? I mean, that's like bullet points in an actual conversation that a D is going to use for you. The I is going to be like, oh my gosh, we've been thinking about this forever. My best friend just moved to this amazing neighborhood. We went to this party and just fell in love with the whole vibe, vibe, party. Oh my gosh, we love this. Those are things that D would never say. So again, you're looking for what type of personality is it talking about. So I like that opening question, and here's some potential responses. What's most important to you in a home or in an agent? That's a good question. Because again, all these questions is not just how or what they say, it's how they say it, Danielle. Do you have to cut them off? Are they very tight-lipped and short? Like, what's the vibe of this person? So asking these questions, you're not just looking for the content of the information. You're looking for how they think and how they answer it to help you discern what they are. And once you kind of figured out what they are, you can then tailor your talking to them to their style, and you'll get a lot better responses and communication with them.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
So I love this. This whole board right here is a fantastic example of how you had an idea and then you're going to take this and you're building on a skill set. But now what I'm seeing here too is in these questions, which are across the board, can be asked to any client, regardless of their where they fit on the disc profile, because it's actually intended to determine such,
Right.
right?
Right.
Now you take that set and you bring it over to your listing prep or your workflow or your buyer pre consultation workflow. And you just remember, I want to ask these one or two questions that I've already determined are going to be really natural to work into the conversation. And I'm just going to really clue into how they answer because I'm going to bring it back to my AI. And then when I start another workflow specific for that client, I've got my direction, right? I've got real clarity on how I can most clearly and effectively communicate with them. So I love this. Like I see this spinning off into multiple different workflows. This is great, Rick.
Yeah, absolutely. Question three, have you been looking at properties online? What have you seen so far? What's your ideal timeline? Right. So these are you're involving spin selling, which you're asking situation and problem questions, but you're looking for the way they answer to determine not just what the answer is, but what their personality is. Um, who's involved in this decision? So here's a checklist for your first meeting observations: physical and behavioral cues, handshake. I love this. Physical and behavioral cues by type. That's kind of fun. Handshake. I didn't even ask it for this. I asked it like, what question should I ask? And then Claude added all this other stuff for me. Um, D's are firm handshakes, brief, direct eye contact. I's enthusiastic, warm, they linger with their handshake. S's gentle, warm, may wait for you to initiate. C's professional, appropriate, and brief. Posture leans forward and assertive. Like, this is great stuff to know. And again, if you haven't studied this stuff, so this agent I talked to this morning, by the way, who sells a ton of houses, he said the two most important things. Remember that early in the call I said this. Two most important things he learned when he got into real estate were the mirror and matching and the disc profile. He goes, and he said this: if you haven't studied the disc yet, are you even in sales? That's what he said to me this morning. It's like, yeah, that's a good point, Jeff. Um, like, this is stuff we should know as realtors and get really good at because it's going to help our ability to close people and not only make friends and build rapport, but actually earn their business. And that's the point of all this, is earning their business. A lot of people are really good at making friends and building rapport, but they struggle when it becomes, oh, I need to convert them to a client. I need to earn their actual business because people typically go with people they respect. They might like you, they might not like you. As funny as that sounds, as an I, it's odd to me to think that people would use people they don't like, but respect is more important than like. And I's, especially I's and S's, need to learn that lesson because usually I's and S's lead with likability. They lead with relationship building. They lead with building rapport, where C and D leads with credibility and knowledge and taking action and getting things done. And that's what most people want in a real estate agent that's going to help them. They want them to be knowledge. Of course, friendly is nice. That's certainly not a negative, but it's not as important as being good at what you do. How many times have we all seen, we're all realtors on this call, we've all seen agents that we didn't like because they were a complete jerk, but they might do a ton of business. Like, how are they doing so much business? It's pretty obvious people respect them. And respect is really high on the scale. In fact, it's above like. So learning how to deal with these different personality types and then learning how to lead them is really important. I always give that, like the analogy, Danielle, I would say is like if I walked into a car dealership, if you walked into a car dealership and I'm a salesperson there, if you walk in and I immediately start trying to get you into a car, hey Danielle, nice to meet you. I'm Rick. Come check this car out over here. You look great in this. Like bring you right over, get you in the car, open the door. What do you think of that? How do you like the smell of that leather? I don't know anything about you. I don't even know why you're there. Like this is ridiculous, icky, salesy, used car stuff that nobody likes. So that's not probably not the good approach. But if I did spend 5 or 10 minutes asking you questions, getting to know why you're there, what your budget is, what you're looking for, what kind of cars you've had in the past, what kind of things you do like and don't like in a car, there's a point in your brain where it's like, okay, this guy gets me. You're going to want me to start leading you in a minute. You're going to want me to take control. And if I don't do that, if I stay in this really friendly, hey, we'll talk soon, I'll give you my card, let's be in touch, you're just going to go to somebody else that's going to be directive and sell you the car. Right? I mean, that's how people are in real estate too. That we have to learn how to pivot and transition from talking about homes to talking about the relationship, especially when this is early on and we're talking to a person for the first few times and we're getting to know them, talk about their situation. Do they buy or do they own or do they rent? Where do they want to live? Where do they work? What's their lifestyle? We start going through all this stuff. We have to learn to transition from talking about the house to how we're going to work together and represent them. And we have to learn how to close people. And that's a real challenge for a lot of real estate agents. D's and the challenger types do it better because that's their natural personality. So if you're not a natural closer, we need to learn this stuff.
Hmm. Well, and part of this too is, understanding their personality types so that we could best understand their decision-making process, how they make decisions. Because they've already come to us because they want to buy or sell a home, or they've already walked on to the car lot because they want to buy a car. So we're talking about approaches, but there's still the same objective. It's to sell or buy something. So all of this is to figure out how can we make their decision-making process the most effective and efficient and comfortable and enjoyable process. That's what we're really trying to accomplish here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, it gives you. I love this little chart. Physical and behavioral cues. I love that. I love this during property tours. What are they likely to do when you're showing property? What are their behaviors? Walking quietly through spaces. This is a D. Makes quick decisions. Yes, no, next. Checks watch. Mentions time constraints. What's the commute time? When can we close? How fast? How's the sell here? Makes calls during the tour. Like an S would never do that. And you go through each one. Other different behaviors. I just thought that was fun, but it gave me these little ideas just to help me again get to know and understand the personalities. Um, More questions, and then it gives you the little thing that we talked about, the matrix that we just went through at the beginning of the call. But then I would role play with it. I would say like, okay, in role playing, here's what the person said, or here give it like a couple of emails in a context box on your canvas, and say, help me determine what type of a person this is. I would create a context box, right? Put some emails into this thing, and say, hey, help me figure out what this person is based on these communications, and why do you think that? So again, to kind of summarize what we talked about at the beginning, though, I would start. You don't have to download a bunch of stuff. Huzi already knows everything about the disc. Just tell it, hey, I want to go through a bullet point training for each disc style. I'm a real estate agent. I want to know what to say and what not to say in the context of a real estate agent looking to talk to their clients who are each of the different styles. Like that's literally my first prompt. You could just do that same prompt without giving it any data and get a great output, and then just keep building it from there and keep iterating it from there. But you can see how AI can take all this data and information. I have books of all this stuff. I just put all on a board, and now I get real world examples of how I can use it. So now it's up to me to implement these languages and these approaches, things to say and things not to say. But Huzi makes the shortcut so much easier and so much faster. So what do you think of that, Danielle? Comments?
So I think this is a really good example too of for all of you guys on the call. I'd love to hear if you've marinated over the last hour while we were talking, if you've had any breakthroughs with AI. I listen to Rick and all his wisdom. Similarly to like, when you listen to podcasts or you read a book and you've got this spark where you're inspired by something they're saying. And in all the training we've done, what I see agents do is they're really excited about this output we show them. And they're like, oh my gosh, can you send that to me? Show me that thing.
Yeah.
But the power in AI is that you don't need to wait for an email for someone to send you their static generation or a PDF step-by-step workflow like we were all trained decades ago when we got into the business, right? You can
Mm-hmm.
start with just that spark. You go to a conference or you listen to that podcast and you're like, oh, that is how I take my business to the next level or my service to the next level or what have you. And when you reach the point where you're like, but I'm not sure what I don't know. I don't know what I don't know, or I don't know how to apply this to my business. That's what you take to your AI. So you simply say, hey, I was just on this podcast, right? And Rick Gray was talking about the DISC profile. And I really think that this would help me upskill in my business and level up my service to my client. But I'm not entirely sure how to go about gathering this needed information in this context so that I can work it into my interactions with my clients. Like just that sharing
Right.
your question with your AI. And I think that for me, that's been the most transformational aspect of artificial intelligence in my life is like anytime I feel that moment where, okay, I'm gonna put that on a sticky note and save it for Thursday when I have more time. I ask myself, why do I not think I have time in the moment? Is it because I feel like I need to do more research? I'm lacking confidence in a certain conversation I may be facing. Really being self-aware on what it is that I feel like needs to be put off till later, because that's what I need to take to my AI. It's not necessarily for research or direction if I'm aware that it's actually a lack of confidence. It's a skill set or something like that. So I'm curious, does anybody have anything to share on the call?
Yeah, Daniel, I see you nodding a lot. What is your thoughts on this? Have you done this stuff before? And what do you think about what we went through?
Just me? Or
Yeah, you
okay, I because
born
Danielle and
Timbers fan. I
Danielle,
can see your Timbers
Oh,
jersey
yeah.
there.
yeah, yeah. Well, Danielle and
Hey,
Danielle
Mark.
sound the same, almost. Yeah, I've done a lot. So about 4 years ago, I really wanted to get into divorce real estate, and I remember seeing a conference with that, and I just really liked it, but I didn't know how to start and how to get it going. And then last fall, I just put it to Huzi, and all of a sudden, it was creating these programs for me, these courses. Because what I want to do is get them approved. I'm going to submit them next Monday to the state bar because I want to get them approved by the state bar so that I can present, do like a lunch and learn at a family attorney practice, and to all their attorneys, I can give them one CLE that they need, and one of them is an ethics course. And I was hoping my own attorney for my divorce would give me some advice, but he's a judge now, so I realized he probably can't do that. So we went back to Huzi and said, well, look, I need some more advice. Is this going to work or not? And it said, no, that's not going to fly. And here I thought I was all done. I have all the slides and everything set up, but it went back through and gave me a whole bunch more stuff to redo. And that's what I'm kind of doing now is finalizing it all and making it work. So it gave me a lot of confidence that I can do this, and it's already provided a lot of different leads on who to contact and talk to, stuff like that. The funny thing is I always use just the plain old Huzi model. I've never done,
Oh, okay.
maybe once I used the Huzi long version or something, but
Right.
I've
Who's he
never
thinking?
done Claude or, it's funny, but so that's going to be an exercise I do this week is just practice and see what happens. But yeah, I think the main thing for me is just learn what I can do. And I've been using it for a long time for my language studies because I want to become fluent in German, Japanese, Spanish, and French. French is
Wow.
brand new for me. German used to be great 40 years ago when I was in college. Japanese is my best language, and Spanish. I've worked in both those languages in both banking and financial services. So those are pretty good. Those are my kind of relaxed. But I used Huzi to help me develop audio files. And so I create these CSV files, and then they're converted into audio files. So I listen to them all the time, and that's just kind of a
Nice.
different way to practice and learn a language that I'm experimenting with. I've never done it that way before, but when I really plug in and do that, throughout the day, it really makes a big difference. So that's been pretty fun for me. And
Yeah,
those are
that's
the
awesome, Daniel.
two biggest things I've done with Huzi so far. So
Good. No, perfect. I appreciate
Incredible.
that. It's amazing.
Love that. Thanks for sharing, Dan.
yeah, sure.
Great.
I know I should probably get that into the chat or the conversation thing, but I don't know. I'm always a
Yeah,
little
put it in there.
shy
We love that
and
kind of stuff.
whatever.
Perfect.
That's great. How about you, Mark? Any work with the disc specifically or any of these things that you practice?
Not for a long time. I used to, back early Keller days, I got into disc, obviously got my profile and work with that. I organically interact, but I'm reminded when I see it and an interaction list like this, and I go, "Oh, this is great," but I'll never remember it. So I know exactly where I also am on the disc profile too. In
Yeah.
there.
Uh,
Yeah, I'm
you're an
very
I,
much the
Mark. You're an
I'm an
I.
IS, depending on which day it is. In
Yeah.
Gemini, which personality pops up. So, I mean, for me, I've most of it is obviously just running by the seat of my pants and just based on life lessons. But every now and then I pick up something new, some new phrase, and I've added in. I've made a concerted effort to do that in the last 2 years in my practice, and I think it's reaping, bearing results at this point, which is good.
Nice.
So,
Love
Very
that.
good.
for me, I've been using Huzi so much to just refine how I interact with my niche and the car show, and just coming up with ideas. And it gave me some, I mean, it reinforced much of what I was doing, probably 80% of what I recommended I was already doing, but then it opened
Mhm.
my eyes to a few other things. And now sharing Huzi with some of these other niche agents around and what they're doing without AI or using it in a different way. It,
Right.
uh, it brings back good ideas, and refreshes me and opens my horizons. My challenge is that my MacBook Pro is being hammered by the Huzi Pro, needing more bus speed. So it's time for a new
Oh,
laptop in my future here real soon. So
nice.
so
Oh,
I tend to use more of the Spark Pad and just keep a lower use than obviously working on the big canvas.
yeah. Yeah, I like the canvas, but it does take a faster and more modern computer, I suppose. It's funny because it's interesting. I had a client last week. So any one of these tips could get you a deal, could get you a sale, could make you money. It's really funny. This one
Hmm.
is a high S agent I was talking to. He's like, Rick, I'm dealing with these clients in a specific city here in Idaho, and they were going to list their house, but then they kind of ghosted me and I lost contact with them. And they kind of came back and now they said they want to buy a house in this new area. And he goes, the old me would have said, okay, that's great. Let's go to it. And they had a house already picked out. Let's meet there. He would have just agreed to it. He goes, but I stopped before I hung up the phone. I said, so what are you doing about the house you were going to list? Before we go any further, let's talk about that. That's literally what he said. Before we go any further, let's talk about this other house. And they go, oh, yeah, we want to list it with you. So he's getting a listing. He goes, I don't know if that was off the cuff. They had already decided that, but I put him on the spot, which I never would have done because he's an S. And I put him on the spot and said, what are we doing about this other house before we go see this other one? And oh, yeah, we're going to list it with you. So he's getting a list by, and he's like, I'm pretty confident I wouldn't have got that listing had I not done that. So any one of these little techniques sometimes can make a difference for you. Yeah.
That's great. Love that.
Yeah.
Self-aware, being self-aware and
Yeah, exactly. Don't just let people lead you. You make sure you lead them. That's one
Mhm.
of the big keys of this. And the disc is learning how to do that. So, well, thank you guys for being on the call tonight. Appreciate you. And go into Canvas and SparkPad and play around with this with the disc specifically, and try Claude, Daniel. See what you think of
I
it.
will. I'll definitely do that.